Thank you. Thank you, Kirkland. Great to be here. Welcome to the Brainpower Chronicles, our 6th year. I have never been here in Kirkland. Is this the spiritual birthplace of Costco? Is this the Bethlehem of Costco? Am I correct? Just want to know where I am. Good to know I finally made it to the promised land. Excellent. Thank you very much. So, thank you all for coming out to this wonderful event sponsored by NAMI. And I can't believe so many people are here. You are going to hear some very powerful stories told by some people who are not used to telling stories. None of the people you see here tonight, they're not comedians, they're not actors, they're not motivational speakers. These are just regular people with stories to tell about how mental illness has affected their lives and how they're living successfully now with it. And so I know you're all going to be generous with your laughter and applause, because not only did they have to spend the last 8 months figuring out how to tell these stories that have shaped their lives, but they've also had to deal with the fear of coming out here in a spotlight and saying that to a room full of strangers, which is very scary. But I know you guys are going to take care of them, each one of the 5 tellers that come out here. So we are going to have a great time, a very powerful time. I'd like to thank NAMI for putting on this show every year. Go ahead, put your hands together for NAMI. This is... The thing, NAMI has such a simple goal. They're just here to improve the lives of people who are affected by mental illness. And one of the best ways to do that is through storytelling, because storytelling connects people. And when people are connected, there's no room for stigma. And that's one of the things we're going to do here tonight. We're going to reduce the stigma by showing 5 people with great lives who also happen to have a mental illness diagnosis. But it's just one part of their lives. So we are going to get started here in just a moment. But before we do, I got to do a little housekeeping. It's going to be easier for the storytellers if everyone is kind of in this main section. So if anyone up there, way up there, if you would be so kind to maybe move down a little bit, just so we're all in the same area. Actually, it's kind of dark now. Stay where you are. Wait. But just laugh and clap really loud. And if you do need to move at any time during the show, just wait till I'm up here. Don't do it while the storytellers are sharing their story. So if you want to move down front and just be a little closer to these amazing people, wait till I'm up here. You can do whatever you want when I'm up here, but be mindful of when the tellers are on. Also, of course, turn your cell phones off. We don't need to. Are there any heart surgeons in the audience? No? Okay. You're fine. Turn your cell phones off. And you are going to hear some great stories tonight. And even though each story is only going to last a few minutes, I hope that what you hear here and what you feel here tonight stays with you for a very long time. And now, please welcome to the stage our first storyteller, Jen Hammond.
So it's August of 2016, and I'm sitting at a dive bar waiting for my friend Lindsay to come meet me. I noticed that the Olympics have started on TV, so I asked the bartender, hey, can you turn it up a little bit? Now, normally the Olympics are my favorite sporting event to watch. It's the opening ceremony, and I love how all the athletes are filing into the stadium, waving their country flag, beaming with pride. They're all smiling and happy, but I'm pissed. I've been training as a boxer since I was 22 years old, and I'm not there. Lindsay comes, we eat our food, and as we're walking out the door, she grabs my arm and says, hey, it looks like the women's boxing event has started. Do you want to stay a little bit? So we stay, and I try my very best to hide my jealousy and resentment as I see the boxers that I used to train with on TV at the Olympics. I feel like I got kicked in the stomach. Just 3 years earlier, in 2013, I was a 2-time Washington State Golden Glove champion, a 2013 USA National champion, and a 2013 Intercontinental champion. Thank you. Plus, I had just found out that year that I got accepted to grad school to be a mental health counselor. So at that time, my life was looking pretty good. So 3 months later, in 2013, I'm sitting in a grad class on madness, where we're learning about different psychological illnesses. And when I'm already kind of worried that I have some very incurable mental illness, I feel this wave of nausea rush through my body. Weird, I'm thinking to myself. I quickly forget about it and pay attention to the lesson. Later that evening, I'm at home trying to study and do homework for this class, and that same queasy feeling enters my body. It doesn't go away. I end up staying at home for about 7 days, laying on the couch, not feeling well enough to go to class. So eventually, I call my partner and ask her to meet me at the ER down the street. As we're walking there, I feel a little embarrassed that I don't have some kind of physical injury that others can see. But when I walk through the doors, I see that the waiting room is pretty empty, and I get into a room fairly quickly. As I'm laying in the hospital bed, I remember sitting up, reaching for a cup of water, but my hand instinctively grabs for a barf bag. The next thing I know, I'm laying on my back on the cold hospital floor, staring up at the ceiling, trying to avoid the bright fluorescent lights. After I kind of regain my faculties, I feel my partner's hand on my shoulder, turning me to my side so I don't aspirate. I'm starting to realize that I'm on the floor because the nurse didn't put the bed rail up before she left the room. It felt like the hospital was completely empty because there were so many doctors and nurses coming to help with my head. It's probably why they rushed me down the hall to an MRI machine to make sure I was okay. After waiting for a long time, finally the radiologist comes out to tell me, "Hey, I think we found something, but don't be alarmed." I'm thinking, alarmed for what? So I go home and I feel like I'm floating like a ghost, like out of my body, just going through the motions. Scan after scan, I wait. Then finally, a radiologist comes out to tell me the good news. Well, you have a brain tumor, a grade 3 anaplastic astrocytoma in your right frontal lobe. The next week, I'm meeting my neuro-oncologist for the first time. His name is Dr. Lovelace. Yeah, Dr. Lovelace. So, living up to his namesake, he has no bedside manner and bluntly tells me that after my surgery, I'll have a golf ball-sized hole in my brain and I'll be far more susceptible to brain bleeds and concussions from a blow to the head. But at this point, I'm not really registering what he's saying. And then, right before our appointment is over, he bluntly points out again my prognosis, 3.5 years. And I think to myself, 3.5 years to live? Okay, I'm reasoning with myself. I'm 27 years old. I can still reach 30. I can still finish my, now extended, graduate school training. But most importantly, I can still keep training for the 2016 Olympics. That same evening, I run back into the gym and beg my coach to get me a pro fight before my surgery. She pulls all the strings she has and finally tells me she gets a girl from Montana who's willing to fly out and fight me. But she warns me, "You can't tell anyone that you have brain cancer, Jen, or no one's gonna wanna host you on their card." So I nod my head, zip my lips, I'm pretty stoked. In 1 month, I'm standing in the middle of a boxing ring on a televised ESPN Friday Night Fight card with my hand raised for the final time. 5 days later, I'm checking into my surgery with a nice shiner on my left eye. I can see the condescending looks of the nurses and the staff as I check myself in. The surgery goes great. They remove the entire tumor, and I have 6 weeks of radiation and a year of oral chemo. Maybe it was from chemo brain, but I somehow convinced myself that if I moved to Mexico or Canada, I could skirt by and keep fighting under the radar and no one would notice. But as the last few months of chemo comes around, this fantasy begins to fade. I think of taking chemo pills as like a leaky sink. As each chemo pill went down, as each drop of water leaked from that sink, I started to feel like I was losing a part of myself, like I was losing my identity. I fell into a deep depression, often staying in bed for weeks on end. I was eating crappy food, drinking, gaining a lot of weight, which would normally bother me as an athlete, but I felt safe and comfortable in the covers of my bed. My partner is a crutch, allowing me to move through my depression in my own time. But eventually she says, "Jen, maybe you should talk to someone, like a therapist." I get mad. A therapist? I am a therapist. How are they even gonna understand what I'm going through? I don't need to talk to anyone. But as she's normally right, a couple weeks later, I find myself walking through the doors of this so-called healer who could help ease my suffering. After several sessions, she suggests that maybe I'm feeling anxious and depressed because of my unresolved grief. Grief, I think out loud. Well, obviously I'm grieving the loss of boxing. But when I went home that night and I was really thinking about why I was grieving, I think I was grieving the loss of my identity. I finally come back into the gym out of the oasis of my bed. I creep back in. I see some familiar faces, but many of them are new. I'm bombarded by a lot of their innocent questions, like, "When's your next fight coming up?" Or, "You've been gone a while. How's training going?" Or my favorite, "Oh, are you moving up a weight class?" I can't handle the questions. So I try to sneak out of the gym as best I can. When my parents call me on the phone, despite their really good intentions, they ask, "Well, can't you find something else that you really like to do?" This pisses me off. I say, "Sure, Mom. Let me just find something else that I've been practicing my whole life at that I'm really passionate about and talented with. No biggie. Plus, every employer is looking for a 1-0 ex-professional boxer." As a young practicing therapist, I had always kind of felt like a fraud because I had never really experienced mental illness before. I'd always thought that I had a pretty idyllic childhood, which was lucky. I never had any traumatic experiences or struggled with mental illness. But as I'm moving through school in this profession, I'm starting to realize that this idyllic childhood is kind of a handicap for this profession. I didn't understand how people could, I didn't understand people's, when they expressed depression or anxiety, and more significantly, I never really felt empathy for any of them. Now, I'm beginning to overcome these fraudulent feelings of being a bad therapist from my little hiccup with brain cancer, which pretty much interrupted my entire life. But now I'm starting to see the silver lining of it. I'm starting to a little bit understand my patients when they talk about depression and anxiety, and most importantly, I'm able to feel empathy for them for the very first time. I still feel depression, and I still stay in bed a day or two, but these dark days are becoming fewer and further between. The anxieties does still pop up, but it comes in waves now where the peaks are never as high as they used to be. I'll never fully be without mental illness. I'm just learning how to manage it better. I give back to the boxing community now by volunteer coaching and judging at local amateur events, and I'm in a PhD program for clinical psychology where I'm helping others traverse a similar path that I had. I'm no longer fighting in a bout or fighting for my life, but now I'm fighting for others. As a Sagittarius, I've always thought that I liked being in control of everything, didn't need help from anyone else, that I could do it all by myself, but this was something that I needed others for. I'm grateful that I have a community now in my corner for life. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. Did you feel as terrible as I did that she had to see a doctor named Loveless? If that's your name, dude, just don't become a doctor. That's all. Would you go see Dr. Stinky Butt? No. Dr. Charge Too Much? No. Just get another, change your name. Oh my God. You know, I was talking to Jen backstage before the show, and she was telling me, describing this journey through, these mental health challenges, all the challenges, and she said it felt like a curtain was rising in front of her, slowly revealing all of herself. And I know, because I've shared my own story of mental illness on this stage, I know that all the tellers here tonight have learned to let that curtain rise all the way to the top. And That's why they're able to be here tonight. So thank you, Jen. And now, please welcome our next storyteller, Natalie Wong.
I'm 10 years old and I'm teetering on the edge of my bathtub looking in the mirror. I'm trying to decide what to wear to the theater with my parents. In my mind, the only reason I'm being taken on what's supposed to be their date is that my brother has recently been sent to a wilderness rehab program and there's no one to stay home and watch me. I know I've been left out of important family conversations because my parents are trying to protect me, but I feel so alone. I feel the need to be perfect so my parents don't have to worry about me because they have enough to worry about already. And as I look at myself in the mirror, everything changes. I'm aware of my body in a way I never have been before. It's as if I'm seeing it for the very first time. I feel like a stranger in my own skin. I am disgusted with myself. My clothes don't fit how they used to. My face isn't thin, my nose isn't pretty. I'm not skinny enough, white enough, or Asian enough. Asian girls are supposed to be thin and delicate, but my thighs are thick with muscle. I realize that I can't control what's happening around me, so I decide I need to control what's happening inside of me, but the only way I seem to be able to quiet my mind is to eat less and run more. 5 years later, I'm back in my bathroom, but this time I'm on the floor. I feel heavy with hate. I hate my body, and I hate myself for losing control. As I'm attempting to purge the food I just binged, my mom walks in and I can tell she's in shock. I can sense her pain at finding me like this. I need to let her know that this isn't what it looks like. This isn't what it seems. I just lost control, and I can't stand having this food in my body. But no words come out of my mouth. How did I end up doing exactly what I was trying to prevent? My parents have provided the perfect life, and somehow I've made things worse for my family. I don't understand why I can't handle life like everyone else. When I go to the doctor's office with my mom, what was supposed to be a checkup suddenly takes a turn. I'm being told that I need to be hospitalized to stabilize my heart. I can tell that no one realized how serious this was. My strong, athletic body has hidden how little food I've been eating. I didn't realize that running miles and miles and eating less could hurt my heart, and I would have never considered myself anorexic. But all of a sudden, I'm receiving a diagnosis, and I know that this label will change everything. I go from running the same 7-mile loop every single day to being put on bed rest and only allowed to move about the hospital by wheelchair. I'm angry at my parents and the nurses and the doctors. I'm forced to eat whatever food shows up in front of me, and my hand is bruised from blood draws. I feel like no one trusts me anymore. I feel more isolated than ever. I feel like that little girl again, standing on the edge of the bathtub, stuck in this body that I hate. The times my dad breaks the rules and lets me get out of the wheelchair and walk for short stints while we explore Children's Hospital are everything to me. These brief moments of feeling seen remind me that my parents are on my side. A few weeks later, I'm in intensive outpatient treatment. I'm still frustrated about how much food I have to eat and I don't get to move my body the way I want to. But there's yoga on the schedule at 2 p.m., and since activities in treatment aren't exactly optional, here I am. I'm being guided out of Shavasana, the final few minutes of class where you lie on your yoga mat in stillness and silence. And I realize that for the first time that I can remember, my mind is quiet. The incessant calorie counting, body scrutinizing, and endless thoughts about food have subsided. I've become so accustomed to the constant intrusion of calories in food that I didn't even realize my mind could be peaceful. And in that moment, I know that whatever this yoga thing is, this is it, and it's going to lead to my healing. As soon as I'm out of treatment and cleared for yoga, I find the nearest studio. It's this tiny little studio in Issaquah, and it's perfect. The other women in the yoga for stress reduction class are mostly 50 or 60 plus, and then there's me, a 15-year-old girl just trying to find her way. The instructor's name is Andrea, and she's never treated me differently than the other women. I found this place where I can come, and I'm not Natalie with anorexia, I'm just another student, and it feels so safe. There are no mirrors, no comparison, no need to be perfect. I start checking in classes and cleaning the studio just to spend more time in this space because I see these other women who are comfortable in their bodies, and I want to feel that too. But healing isn't always linear, though. Somewhere along the way, I made a promise to myself to get well enough and tell the doctors what I knew they wanted to hear so that I could go to college and return to my ways of control without all the watchful eyes. An embarrassing but honest look into the mind of my eating disorder. I get into the University of San Francisco, the school of my dreams, sitting at the top of the city. I can't believe that I'm actually here. I remember the very first time I stepped onto campus while touring colleges, and I knew that this was it. This is where I wanted to go. I've always dreamt of being a city girl, and here I am. My dorm room is on the 8th floor, and the baseball field down below leaves this unobstructed view of the skyline. As the sun rises, the sky lights up, and it glows pink and orange. This is the freedom that I asked for. But it isn't the relief that I expected. For me, being on the 8th floor means I walk the 8 flights of stairs every single time I go to and from my dorm room. Not because I want to, but because I'm afraid that if I don't this time, then maybe I won't next time, and then maybe I'll lose all control. I know that this isn't normal behavior because when I'm with the other girls, they never even consider taking the stairs. I go to yoga classes at the rec center, but they aren't the same. I start restricting food again. And I bury myself in my schoolwork trying to get a perfect 4.0, which is a lot harder in college than it was in high school. I watch myself wither away to my lowest weight. And now when I look in the mirror, I can see that my muscles no longer hide my thinness. As winter break draws near, I can feel the anticipation of seeing my family building inside of me. I can imagine their reaction when they see me. I know I'm sick. I know I need help. And I know that if I don't change something, anorexia is going to take my life. When I tell my parents that I can't go back, I feel like a failure. I feel like I'm disappointing everyone. I feel like I'm wasting the privilege of going to college that I know not everyone has, and I feel like I'm falling behind as my peers bound forward towards the careers and lives of their dreams. I used to be a high-achieving student and talented athlete, the last person that anyone, especially myself, thought would be dropping out of school. I don't know how I lost my way. A year or so has passed, and I've spent many, many hours in therapy appointments and doctor visits, and many more in yoga classes. I enroll in yoga teacher training, and the more time I spend immersed in the world of yoga, the more my perfectionism recedes. Somewhere along the way between learning to teach and continuing to practice, that incessant voice that had been a constant intrusion for so long gets quiet. My fear around food fades to a whisper, and then to silence. My relationship with my body is shifting. This yoga thing, it's working. And then one day I look in the mirror and I realize that I'm no longer that little girl standing on the edge of the bathtub in shame. And I'm no longer that girl walking flights and flights of stairs in fear. But I'm happier and healthier and freer than I thought I could ever be. I look at my life that is full and abundant, and I realize how grateful I am to still be here. I have the privilege of pursuing my passion as my profession. I get to hold space for others as they develop loving relationships with their bodies, hearts, and minds. I regain trust in myself and my body, and I get to share the practice that saved my life with so many others. I used to keep these pieces of myself hidden. I was afraid that if anyone saw my past, my imperfections, or the fear and desperation that used to drive my every decision, that no one would see me as strong. But I've since realized the power of being open and honest. Now each year when my birthday week rolls around, I share with my yoga classes a glimpse of the story that led me to teaching, not just to celebrate another year of life that anorexia didn't take from me, but to remind others that they are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm so glad that you're not hiding yourself anymore. That's so important. When you've been through this journey, you finally feel some healing. You just can't keep it inside after a while. You want to keep it all hidden, but after a while, you feel like you want to share this. You want to share what you've learned with other people because you know it's going to help. And it just takes so much. It takes a lot of courage to come out of the shadows here, from the wings here, and tell the story, then go back. But to come out of the shadows in your everyday life, at your job, when you're teaching yoga, that takes a lot of courage. But that's what we got to do when we're ready to do it. That's part of letting people know they're not alone. So thank you, Natalie. Our next storyteller coming to the stage is going to need a little mic adjustment. So please welcome Abhishek Kulkarni. Abhishek, come on out, my friend. And we're going to... There we go.
I'm 8 years old. In the 550 square foot, one bedroom, one kitchen apartment in Mumbai, India, where I live with my parents and younger sister. Tonight, my grandparents and my uncle are here too, and we are just sitting in the living room after having finished dinner. My uncle is very irritated and he's very drunk and he's shouting at the top of his voice. These walls have ears, They are listening. I'm trying to tell you there's someone out there who's going to kill me. I'm asking for help, and you people are just useless. He slams the door and leaves the apartment after several hours of this back and forth shouting. I shudder at the loud noise of the door slamming, and I'm very confused. So I look to the adults in the room for some comfort. They just seem to ignore me as if I don't even exist. The next morning, my dad is yelling at my mother. Last night, your brother stole jewelry and money from our cupboard. I don't want to see that devil's face ever again in our house, and I don't want him anywhere near my kids. And then my dad turns to me and says angrily, "Don't you dare grow up to be like your uncle. All you super intelligent people just creating trouble for everyone around you, blaming other people for your life's troubles. You are the one creating troubles for everyone in your life." I just stand there, frozen like a statue, scared, as my dad's tall 6'3" giant frame is towering over me. I'm afraid that he might hit me. Luckily, he doesn't. Nearly every other week after that, I keep getting this same stern warning: don't grow up to be like your uncle. And I don't know how to react. All I can think of doing is to come up with ways to please my dad. So I become a really good student in school, getting very good grades, especially in chemistry, a subject that my dad has a PhD in and teaches in college. My uncle, or as I fondly call him, Rajesh Mama, and we share such a special connection that nobody else around us seems to recognize it. I'm just free to be myself when I'm around him, especially when he's not drinking any alcohol. But lately, he has moved so far away with my grandparents that I don't get to see him as often. But on the rare occasions that we do meet, he sings a song in English on his guitar. He teaches me how to play chess. He shows me his huge collection of English music and books. I tell my uncle, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I want to read every single book. I want to sing every single song. And I want to play the guitar just like you. By the time I'm 11, I start overhearing my mom and my grandma saying some things about my uncle. They're saying things like, we need to perform a traditional ritual to get rid of all these evil ancestral spirits inside him that are making him behave like this. Occasionally, I'd hear the words bipolar disorder or psychiatrist and schizophrenia, and I just don't know what's going on. But I dare not ask any question because I'm fearful of my dad. I do, however, remember hearing some of these words in Indian movies where they would show mentally ill patients like monkeys, scratching their armpits, scratching their heads, blabbering nonsensical words. And I remember as a kid laughing at all these scenes along with the rest of the audience. That's just how we all grew up. Still, I never connected the movies to my uncle. When I was 21, I moved to the US for graduate studies because I simply could not take the toxic environment at home anymore, with the constant bickering matches between my parents. So before I leave, I go visit my uncle. He tells me how proud he is of me and how much he's going to miss me. And I hug him. And something inside me tells me that this might be my last hug with my uncle. It tells me, I know you're going to grow up to be a good man, and I wish you all the success for your life in America. As I leave the apartment, I take one final glance at my uncle, and I see almost this cry of desperation in his eyes, tears in his eyes, and I'm feeling so sad for leaving him behind with my clueless grandparents and parents who I believe are just going to eat him up alive and never understand how beautiful of a man my uncle is. 2 years later, I get a call from my mom. Your uncle is dead. He killed himself. We tried to take him to a psychiatrist, get help with medications. He refused to take any help. My heart just sank, and I didn't utter a word. I was overcome by this mixture of guilt, sadness, and anger. I was feeling guilty that I left him behind in India by himself. I was feeling so sad that a beautiful man like him took his own life at the age of 42. And I feel enraged at my grandparents, my parents, and the entire Indian culture that, in my judgment, did not understand how to treat my uncle's mental health condition. Weeks go by, and I begin to ask questions of my mom to understand what was the diagnosis. I never get any clear answers. What I do know, however, is how poorly our Indian culture treats mental health condition and how nobody ever talks about it openly. So I wasn't one bit surprised when even my own closest family members would blame and judge my uncle. So it's no surprise then that at age 41, I feel tremendous shame admitting that I had 2 severe bouts of depression and anxiety with suicidal ideations. Unlike my uncle, who drowned in the quagmire of his culture, I find myself in a progressive city like Seattle, surrounded by a loving community with ready access to a holistic support system. I can sense that unfettered shame trying to bury me deep under its immense weight. But I take the risk. I choose otherwise. I reach out for help. I allow the love of brotherhood in my long-time men's support groups to heal me. Instead of pushing my feelings away, I slowly start accepting them. And gradually, with the help of medications and loving support from my wife and my friends and community, things start to get better. After recovering from my second depression in late 2020, I decided that I was no longer going to keep my mental health condition a secret. I do, however, decide consciously not to tell my parents because all I expect from them is blame and judgment. And to this day, they don't know. But in the spring of 2021, I signed up for a local South Asian community storytelling event with the central theme of speaking your taboo. I feel this resistance to write about my painful experiences through my mental health journey. But eventually I'm able to overcome that and write vulnerably. And I feel this cathartic healing experience, not just writing my story, but then ultimately sharing it out loud in front of my community, knowing that they are holding space. That experience was so empowering and inspiring that I then volunteered to be the main workshop facilitator for their same event in 2022. I helped 6 more South Asian men and women write their own stories of taboo around mental health. I feel so proud when I see them up on stage, live in front of an audience, speaking power to their personal truths, much like I am doing here today. So I feel this passion to become a mental health advocate and break down all the cultural stigmas. So earlier this year, I signed up and became certified to become the lead presenter for 2 NAMI community programs. And I feel like I'm on this mission now to break down these cultural stigmas that exist, especially within the South Asian community around mental health. So today, if my dad were to tell me, don't grow up to be like your uncle, I can confidently say, I am so proud to be like my uncle in so many ways. I have grown up to be an emotionally sensitive, intelligent, well-read man, just like my uncle. I too have dealt with my mental health conditions and fought for my own life. And now I'm fighting for the lives of others. And to my uncle, Rajesh Mama, I love you and I miss you. I know you're looking down upon me right now, and I hope you're proud of the man that I've grown to become. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhi. I just kept thinking while I was listening to him how he said he got better through the support of friends and family and community. And his uncle had so much to offer, but he didn't have that, man. He didn't have family and friends and community. And if he did, he'd be here. He'd be with us now. So that's our job, to be the family and the friends in the community that support people that are going through this, because healing doesn't happen alone. We talk a lot about going to therapy and taking medicines, and all those things are great, they're very important, but none of those things can work without the family and the friends and the community to support those of us who are going through this stuff, man. So thank you, Abhi. Thank you, and thank you for creating a community that didn't really exist before. South Asian people, men and women, talking about mental health issues. That's a community that didn't even exist until Abhi decided to create it, man. And that's what we're hoping to do here tonight, a little bit anyway. Now, before we go any further, before we go out into our next 2 storytellers, I want to bring out a very special person, a woman who shared her story here at the Brainpower Chronicles 2 years ago, and who is also the NAMI board president, Alice Nichols. Alice, come on up.
Good evening. I am so happy to be with you here tonight. Thank you so much for sharing this evening with us. I know you too have been inspired tonight, and we're only halfway done. I've been inspired by the stories of Jennifer and Natalie and Abby. And I'm imagining that it's not an accident that you're here tonight. I'm guessing that your lives have been impacted by mental illness as well. I'm guessing maybe you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. Over the course of any year, 1 in 4 of us are diagnosed with mental illness. Maybe you have a family or a loved one who has mental illness. Maybe you have a friend or a coworker. Or maybe you see the devastating impact of mental illness every day as you go about your business in this community. My name is Alice Nichols, and I am currently serving as the NAMI Washington Board President. And my life has been shaped by mental illness. When my 2 children, who were now adults, thank goodness, were diagnosed with serious mental illness, NAMI was there for me. NAMI provided me education, hope, and support. NAMI provided me a place to tell my story. It provided me a place to tell my story without judgment, without stigma, so I could leave aside the shame and the doubt and the guilt. I want you to think for a second about the profound impact that NAMI has on this community. All around us, and particularly these last several challenging years during COVID, anxiety has increased, depression has increased, suicidal ideation has increased. And NAMI has been here to help. Across this state every year, 30,000 people are getting their needs met, are getting help, are getting support, are getting education from NAMI programs. Signature programs like Family to Family are here to help families manage the devastating impact of mental illness. Families like mine, families like Natalie's. Peer-to-peer helps people who are experiencing the symptoms of mental illness, like Abby. Abby was so inspired by the NAMI program that he went to, that he now is leading 2 of the signature programs in his community. Indeed, NAMI also is trying to change the system, trying to destigmatize, to help people like Jen and the rest of us to manage mental illness. Every year, we work towards trying to identify legislation that's going to help us fund our resources for mental health better. After this, you're going to hear from a couple of other really special people. David is going to tell you a little bit about his experience, as well as Paula. And together, all of these people represent the 30,000 people impacted by NAMI programs every year. So think for a moment of our life, with these wonderful signature programs that are absolutely free to the people who are being served. What does that mean to us? What is that worth to you? What is that worth to this community? What is that worth to the people in your life that are impacted by mental illness? And I want you to think about that and pull out your checkbook. Because we need to have your support and we need to partner with you as we try to build this community in a healthier manner. So if you're watching online, I would like you to press that link that you see on your screen, or you can also take your camera out and flash that QR code and it'll take you to the link to make a donation to NAMI Washington. And if you're in the theater tonight, the ushers will be coming around as we raise the lights up in the seating area to give you envelopes to have you write a check and put it in those envelopes. So as we raise that lighting and we have the ushers come around with envelopes, I'd like you to think again about what NAMI means to this community, what NAMI means to you, and what NAMI can mean as a part of a more healthy, more accepting, stigma-free community. The envelopes are in your program. I thought they were with ushers. I was mistaken. The envelopes are in your program. So now all you have to do, see, so it's easier. All you have to do is take out the checkbook and to write a check to put into that envelope. I can see that many of you are doing that right now, and I want to thank you so much for supporting the 30,000 people in this Washington community who are receiving services and support and education, connection in these programs all across the state. And while you're writing those checks, just know that you are helping people to get support in family-to-family groups, in connections recovery groups, in our own voice. Youth have been particularly hit lately. And so we have particular programs for youth, like Ending the Silence. I can see that many of you are writing checks right now. Thank you so much. And in these checks, it's helping support NAMI Basics for parents of young children and adolescents, for Homefront for families and caregivers of active duty military, special programs for BIPOC and LGBTQIA communities, FaithNet to reach spiritual and faith communities, Sharing Hope, which is a 3-part video and discussion series for our Black and African communities, Compartiendo Esperanza, which is a 3-part video and discussion series for and by the Latino, Latina, Latinx communities, and crisis intervention training components for supporting our law enforcement in providing services sensitive to individuals with mental illness. Thank you so much for writing those checks and supporting the excellent programming that saves lives in our community. Thank you all for your generous support.
You can just close your envelopes up, or ushers will come collect them if you have them. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you. And I turn it back over to Paul, who will take us into the last section of our evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alice. Now, if anyone here is too young to know what a check is, that's how we used to pay for things back in the olden days when we rode into town on horseback, just pick up some hardtack and gingham for the family. Oh my God, I haven't seen a check in so long. All right, I am very excited to introduce this next teller because I've met him first 4 years ago when he walked in out of the blue to the storytelling show I run over on the other side of Seattle, Fresh Ground Stories, where you hear stories just like what we hear tonight, true stories from people who have just lived through stuff. And he told a little bit of the story you hear tonight. And I told him about the Brainpower Chronicles because I had just been involved with it, and I said, one day I hope you're on that stage because this story needs to be told when you're ready. And I'm so glad that he is ready here tonight. Please welcome my friend David Trainer.
I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of Harborview Hospital, and my brain is on fire. My son Gabriel, who 2 weeks ago graduated from high school, is lying in a coma with a traumatic brain injury as a result of an accident. My worst fear is that he will remain in a permanent vegetative state, which for me is worse than death. Now, I've been living this nightmare for 24 hours now, and I can't stop my brain from hurting. So I finished this fifth of vodka that I'm having in my car with me, and when the pain doesn't go away, I stagger to an overpass over the I-5 freeway. And just before contemplating jumping to the traffic below to ending my pain permanently, I pause. And I shout as loud as I can, "God, where are you? I'm in pain." And to my complete surprise, I hear a voice in reply. It says, "I'm with you in your pain, and you need to stay alive for your twin daughter, Lindsay." Upon hearing that voice, my pain diminishes, and I feel the presence of God. So I turn around, I stagger back to Harborview, to the side of my son Gabriel, who 2 weeks later wakes up from his coma and makes a complete and total recovery from his traumatic brain injury. However, having come that close to suicide, I vow to do something about my drinking. You see, I've been concerned about my drinking for years, especially in light of my bouts of depression, because I've been on the verge of suicide before. Only this time, I'm determined to do something about it, so I visit many AA meetings until, like Goldilocks, I find one that is just right. It's called Freedom, and I've been sober now for 12 years. Now, initially it helped with my depression, but the symptoms returned. Withdrawing from life, sleeping all day, thoughts of suicide. Except this time I wanted to spare my kids any kind of gruesome scene, so I wished for a terminal illness, but nothing too painful. Give me enough time to say goodbye to family and friends. Well, you know what they say? Be careful what you wish for. Because on a Saturday morning of May of 2017, I woke up with a slight pain in my abdomen. It became so painful, I drove myself to the emergency room. There, I was admitted with acute pancreatitis, which is extremely painful. I spent the next 131 days in the hospital, where I almost died. After 131 days in the hospital, I was discharged to rehab to regain the 50 pounds that I had lost. After 90 days in rehab, I went back to my house, where unfortunately, I fell back into the black hole of depression. withdrawing from life, sleeping most of the day, thoughts of suicide. I was beginning to lose all hope of ever crawling out of that black hole. Now, my daughter Lindsay drove the 3 hours from Portland up to Seattle, take me clothes shopping because nothing fit, and I treated her to a nice restaurant dinner. And as I'm sitting across from her, I could tell that there was something on her mind. She began to share with me her concerns that I'm not answering her phone calls or text messages, and she's worried about my depression coming back. She says, "Dad, look at me, I'm talking to you." I lift my head, and I could see there's tears welling up in her eyes. I said, "Dad, I want you to promise me that you will make an appointment with your doctor and get some help with your depression." I said, "Lindsay, I promise you, I will meet with my doctor and ask for help." So I met with my doctor, and I begged her, "Please help me with my depression." I told her about my history of depression, my daily thoughts of suicide, and my doctor did something that had never crossed my mind and sent me to a program I had never heard of. She sent me to the Northwest Hospital Intensive Outpatient Treatment Program for mentally ill seniors, where I attended 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for 3 months. In there, I was assigned a social worker named Abe, who came up with a treatment program for me that included group sessions. Now, in group, I felt safe. I overcame my shame, admitted my mental illness, shared other family secrets. We also practiced cognitive behavioral therapy exercises both in the group and at home. And Abe said, now, in addition to the 3 one-hour group sessions per day, you will also go to lunch in the conference room. My first thought was, I am not going to be eating lunch with these losers. I'm going to take a walk on the hospital grounds. Well, Abe must have been reading my mind, because he said, "David, lunch is part of your treatment program, and you will attend." Now, after that first full day, 3 groups and lunch, I felt a glimmer of hope. Now, I should mention lunch was served 4 delicious courses, but more importantly, I met my fellow 10 travelers on the road to recovery. I also met with a psychiatrist. I gave him a list of 13 medications I tried over the decades, none of which were very effective for me. But I told him I'm willing to try any medication, electroconvulsive therapy, anything. He said, "David, the most important thing for you, you come 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 3 weeks, and we will meet again and reevaluate." I said I would do that. Now, after 3 weeks of going religiously, I could feel my symptoms lifting. And I knew that because on the days I wasn't scheduled for group, I was getting up at 8 a.m., and I have never been a morning person. I started each and every day with prayer and meditation. I reconnected with my AA group and my sponsor, Ed. I reconnected with my church family. I connected with family far and wide, in person and by phone. And I got my dog Maggie back, who had been with my good friend Sue for the last year while I'd been in the hospital and rehab. And Maggie and I walked at least a mile every day on the beach. And so after feeling that relief, I began to feel healthier and shared more in group. Overcame my shame, shared some of the secrets, especially my painful relationship with my father, who I believe contributed to my depression. Now, my dad was injured on the battlefield of Germany during World War II when he was only 23. He suffered from PTSD and depression, neither one of which were properly diagnosed nor treated, And like me, he self-medicated with alcohol. In a group, I shared some of these painful encounters involving my dad, sometimes in role play, which I found very cathartic and healing. It's been over 4 years since I graduated from Northwest Hospital Intensive Outpatient Treatment Program for mentally ill seniors. Not only have my symptoms of depression completely disappeared, but my health, both physical and mental, has never been better. I start each and every day with prayer and meditation, and I always include a prayer of thanks to Lindsay for getting me to meet with a doctor for help with my depression. That even in my late 60s, after giving up almost all hope, I have a new lease on life. And for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. When I heard his story for the first time and I heard that first line, my brain was on fire. I went right back to the night many years ago I tried to end my own life, and my brain was on fire. But I had never heard anyone else explain it like that until I heard David say it. And that meant so much to me, to hear someone explain so perfectly what I was feeling that no one else really understood. And I'm just so glad he said that tonight. And the other part that really stands out from David's story is that he starts every day with a prayer of gratitude. Now, I don't know much, I only know my own journey, but I do know that feelings of worthlessness cannot exist in the presence of gratitude. And when I start out my day with a little bit of gratitude, maybe that just gives me a couple minutes of freedom from all the chaos going up here, but that's a couple minutes I didn't have before. So if you take away anything from this show tonight, maybe take away the idea that gratitude is a powerful drug. So thank you, David, for that. Our final storyteller, I'm so happy to introduce you to her. She's been working just as hard as all the other storytellers here tonight. Please give a warm round of applause for Paula Anatul.
My eyes are wide open, but it's pitch black. Barefoot, my back slumped into a ball, my hands tied around my chest. Anything I can do to become as small as possible to fit in this tiny dresser. I hear my father's footsteps, heavy on the wooden staircase, and I count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 10. And the door to our bedroom is now closed shut. We live in a rundown house in Pasig City, Philippines. And just as the exterior of our house looks like it's falling apart, what happens inside our home is far worse. I hope he doesn't find me. My thoughts find its way into my body, stopping every urge in myself not to run away. Instead, I freeze. I stay quiet. I wait. And I repeat this ritual until the sun rises and peeks through the tiny cracks of that dresser. At this point, he leaves to go to work, and I finally breathe. Sometimes, but not always. Most of the time, my dad slams my head against that same dresser or kicks me so hard that I have to gasp for air to breathe. After each time, he tells me he's sorry and that he loves me. And I say, "It's okay, Dad." So I go and tell someone about what was happening at home, an extended family member, an aunt or uncle, I can't recall. But everyone tells me I was making up stories in my head. Maybe I am, I think to myself. I'm just 9 years old, a kid. Who am I to know better than the adults? I am now 12 years old, and I sit in a confused haze in a courtroom, listening to adults talk about my mother, my father, their marriage, who gets me and my little brother, and some official-looking person asking me how often my dad hurt me or which part of my body he touched. I point here, here, and here. My mom looks at the person with a blank gaze. It seems like they believe me now. I can't tell. Shortly before I turned 15, my mother, brother, and I moved to California. A new beginning, a better life. Leave the past behind, my mother says. I want to believe her, and some days I do, but the constant nightmares wouldn't leave me be. Every night I wake up screaming, shaking, panicking, my legs kicking like I'm running, someone's chasing me and trying to kill me, and I don't know why. So instead, I forego sleep and I stay up all night. I create a ritual to cope with the nightmares. Pick up my books, study, read, reread until I have to go to school in the morning. I graduate high school with high honors and admission letters to top universities. A better life, this must be it, I think to myself. At 18, I see a psychiatrist and come back with take-home goodies, meds, a weekly appointment to talk therapy, and a glaring diagnosis of recurrent major depressive disorder. So, I am standing in the middle of the room with my mom sitting under the bright kitchen light, and I tell her about my diagnosis. And she yells, "No one will want you now." I don't know why this warranted such a hostile reaction from my mother, but a part of me quickly feels ashamed and guilty, like I have a tattoo on my forehead that no one wants to look at. I get the sense that pretending everything's fine is a lot better than admitting something's wrong. So, I go roaring into my 20s, bright and shiny me, and I go through a slew of men who want to date me like I'm eating free samples at Costco. I don't even remember their names. It became kind of a ritual too. I think there was Jim, John, James, Andy, Anthony, Michael, and then back to Jim. It starts out amazingly and ends up in the same pattern. I'm scared. I'd whisper to them over the phone. I panic, I walk in circles, I wait for them to hurt me. They'll leave me for someone better. I am defective. I am not good enough. How do I know? I just know it. All evidence points to it. My hands shake, my vision dims, and my heart races. And the only way I know how to survive this is to be hypervigilant of any shift in behavior, or freeze and wait for something horrible to happen. Sometimes, relationships do not drive away the nightmares or flashbacks. So I cope with nights spent partying or using substances with friends at festivals, clubs, or parties. Lights shine on my skin as I dance all night with people I love who I don't remember. I'm wearing red lingerie I bought at a store 4 hours ago. And the loud, fast, reverberating music makes me feel alive, beautiful, and good enough. This is a better life? This is. But the feeling is short-lived. When the music stops, I am wide awake and I cannot shake the feeling that something is incredibly wrong. I am in a dingy hotel at the Las Vegas Strip, coincidentally about to head up another 3-day music festival called Life is Beautiful. And I think, what the heck am I doing? I have to go. So I leave all my friends behind and I start over. I shamelessly go back to school and I take up psychology, just as I'd always wanted. But just as I do so, the world decides to turn upside down and a pandemic hits us all square in the face. Now I'm really alone, in my own thoughts. No men, no friends, no drugs, no parties, nothing. I find myself perusing through my textbooks, seeing keywords like disorders, dysfunctional, and abnormal, all in my DSM-5, and I think, are humans born like this, or are we shaped by our experiences? And what can we do about it? My professor talks about the word trauma for the first time, and I wonder, what is that? What does that even mean? And as I listen to her define that word, I feel like someone described exactly what I had experienced as a child and continued to recreate it as an adult. It was real. I am now 29 years old, about to turn 30 in a few months, and I will myself to go online and find someone to talk to. This time, when I look for a therapist, I type the word trauma. And then I find her. She is a trauma-informed therapist with over 20 years of experience working with child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, and complex trauma. I pull up my computer screen, click the words accept meeting, and from there, everything changes. Well, truth be told, it takes a few sessions. Like, who is this person? Why is she showing up consistently every single time? And why should I trust her? I stick with it despite all my skepticism, and week by week, I notice my chest expand, my breaths become deeper, and somehow, some way, I feel like I can trust this person. I am now 30 years old, and I receive an email notification from my psychiatrist, a formal diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder. I continue to work with my therapist through this. Slowly and surely, these labels, they just fade into the background, and what comes to mind is a bright light shining above a little girl who just desperately wants to be heard. And to my trusted therapist, I speak about the unspeakable, my father and that little girl, all the atrocities that she endured in hands that were meant to comfort, not hurt, and all the relationships I entered to recreate my father. She says, it's okay. You were the child, he was the adult, and you're allowed to feel everything you feel. You are. She asks me gently to do an activity with her. So I am imagining a 30-year-old adult me holding that little girl's hand and saying, I got you now. We are safe. You can trust me. The feeling that plagued my 20s started shifting into slower mornings spent meditating each day, writing down a list of things and people I'm grateful for each night, listening to affirmations and repeating them to myself, reading books about how trauma gets released from the body through movement and a tranquil desire to be surrounded by nature. My mother quickly notices the shift in my behaviors, and she asks me, why are you not going out anymore? And that question stops me, and I think, why am I not going out? And I say in response, I have everything I need right here. Interestingly, I also start seeing both my mother and father as wounded human beings with their own fair share of unresolved traumas, all the while learning to forgive their shortcomings as my parents. And when I hear the labels PTSD, OCD, MDD, or what have you, I no longer feel shame. I feel resolute in that my traumas taught me resilience, my rituals kept me alive, and my depressive days turned me into the compassionate person I am to those in need. From there, I do all of the things I once could only dream and write about. I left California and I live in my favorite rainy state. I work with individuals and families wrought with trauma and violence. I go to graduate school to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a community and a support system of like-minded people. I am married to my incredibly supportive partner, and my 2 emotional support dogs. I live in a warm and cozy home, but the inside is far better. It is a place of healing, full of love, understanding, and mutual growth. I am a mental health advocate. I am not fully healed, but I am now able to be honest with myself and trust myself to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you for reminding us that we don't have to be fully healed to make a difference. I mean, none of us are ever fully healed. Boy, I get choked up. I get choked up after each of these stories. You know, so many of us have used partying and relationships to avoid what we need to look at. But you know, the music always ends. The music always stops, and we're left with ourselves. And I'm so glad that Paula didn't end when the music ended, that she stepped up and she moved toward that healing. And she's doing now what I hope all of us can do in the future is no matter where we are in our journey for healing, we can reach out, we can let other people know they're not alone, that there's hope, and that there's connection. And before we wrap up the show here tonight, I'd like to ask all of our tellers here tonight to come back on stage and our executive director, Lauren Simons, to join us for a very special message. Come on out, everyone.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This is the second year we've been able to come back and be live. We'll be here again next year, and I hope even more people will join us. And what can I say about our amazing cast? Every year for the past 6 years, we have a new group of people every year who are brave enough to stand up here and share the most personal of personal stories of their lives. And they spend 8 months working on their stories with our amazing director, Susan. And I get the great honor of being able to, the only thing really I get the honor of, because they do all the work, is of thanking them and giving them gifts, and they're all just so incredible. So Alice, could you come over so we can do our honors? David, you are first. So we used to get black paperweights for folks. I wanted to finally get like gifts that were more utilitarian. So this year we got bamboo coasters that have Nami Washington, the Brainpower Chronicles, the performer's name, and the year and the cast.
Yeah,
yes. And then also, really, somebody said it in their story, I am not alone, you are not alone, none of us are alone. I'm also really excited to give everybody in cast a copy of Nami's first book written by our medical director, Ken Duckworth, called You Are Not Alone. So thank you, David. Abhishek, don't bump into the microphone. Thank you so much. Everything that you shared was something so new for me to learn about. And the work that you're doing in our community is so important. And I'm so excited to have been able to be here tonight, to hear you. You and I have had some emails back and forth. And I know you were really excited to be able to stand up here and share your story. And you're so proud of the work that you do. And so are we. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. Paula Anna. Oh, if only I could get your quote right on our emails. I'm so sorry. You had the best quotes, though. Thank you so much. Your story, too, everybody's stories just touch me so deeply. And thank you for your bravery and for being here tonight. Thank you. Natalie, I need to find out where you teach yoga, because I cannot turn my brain off, and I have failed at yoga like half a dozen times. My biggest one was failing at pregnancy yoga, and then I swore I would never go back to yoga again. But you sound like we have a lot of things in common in our mental health journeys. So I feel like your yoga studio, as long as there aren't incense, would be the best. Thank you so much. And Jen. Yay! Don't hit me. You're incredible. Thank you. Like everybody. I'm so glad you're with us. I would say you have lived far beyond the 3 years they told you about, and we are lucky for that, to have you. Thank you so much. And to our amazing MC this year, Paul, please join me. I don't know if Paul told you guys, I know he said he had shared his story before. He was in our first cast in 2017, the first time we were ever able to bring this amazing event to you. And he worked with storytellers, I think the year after, and continued to help, and then this year returned to us as our amazing MC, and you did such an amazing job. So to go along with your black paperweight, you now have posters and a book. Thank you. And finally, to our amazing director, Susan Fee. Susan, you deserve to just have this stage for a moment and take a bow, please.
Well, thank you, thank you.
She's amazing.
Thank you.
Step up to the line.
You're right. I know how moving and inspiring you must feel after hearing all these stories tonight for the first time. And I have the privilege of coaching for 8 months and hearing these stories grow and share. It's just such my great privilege to do that. And I really want to highlight that having heard these stories for 8 months, I guarantee you tonight's performance was the best that they shared. From rehearsal on, this was the best. And the difference is you. Because we want to share our stories. And to do that, we need people who are open and not judgmental, who will listen. And if you ever encounter someone with a mental illness, because we will, maybe we are those people, and you don't know what to do or say, or you feel uncomfortable, you just need to say, tell me your story. And just be a listener like you are tonight. I want to promote NAMI again for all of the programs that they offer. I am a mental health counselor myself and have referred people to NAMI multiple times. They are so grateful to have a group of people who understand their story, where they can ask questions, particularly parents with children, adult children, younger children with mental illnesses have been very profound in my practice to be able to refer to NAMI. So for you being here tonight, I appreciate it. If you didn't get a chance to write your check, you can still write a check. As Paul said, we'll do Venmo, we'll do anything. Because to know, especially during such difficult times, that there's a place to go that offers services to help people grow like you've seen in these stories tonight, it is worth being here. So thank you so much for showing up and making the connection about these stories tonight. They are meant to be told, and you have a story that's worth sharing as well. So thank you for the privilege.
Thank you all for being here tonight. In a few minutes, few seconds, the house lights will come up and you will be leaving us. We've loved having you. I know how much it means to have an involved and attentive audience when you're telling a story, and our storytellers were just amazing. On your way out, feel free to stop by our information table to pick up NAMI information, and also, any of you with little children or grandchildren, we have copies of our coloring and activity book, Meet Little Monster, which was written by our staff member, Sophia, who's also here this evening. And again, thank you to you, and let's hear it one last time for our amazing